Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. I hope you had a spectacular summer weekend. We're running out of those, you know. Mine probably could not have been any better except one thing. The dog got sick. Having a sick child is by far the worst. Having a sick spouse is also bad. But right in between those two things is having a sick pet. And when I say pet, I mean dog. I've never had cats. Having a sick dog is second only to having a sick child. And it's way behind having a sick child, but it's still really bad because even with kids, they can tell you how they're feeling. They can tell you what's wrong. They can tell you why they're lethargic and stuff.
I don't know why only dogs and cats are worth mentioning. You never had a sick rabbit or anything else? A sick hamster?
Well, I've never really had pets besides dogs.
You never had a sick snake?
I guess we had some hermit crabs.
Okay.
Had a couple of lizards.
That you caught and then put in a jar or something? Or
we did a lot of that. We did a lot of lizard
these
catching.
Iguanas, big lizards?
No, they're called chameleons, but they're not the chameleons that you think of with the wild eyes and the weird hands. They're like the poor man's chameleon.
Okay.
And actually, they came to a very, very tragic end.
Oh no.
They made the trip with us when I moved from Minnesota. They were really my older brother's lizards, okay? Since you forced me down this road. And they made the trip in their tiny little, it's probably the size of my laptop, like the size of your computer monitor, little aquarium. Made it across. We drove from Minnesota to Utah, where we were moving from. And when we moved into our house in Sandy, God's country, shout out Countrywood Drive, all you people who live there, what's up? There were no window coverings in our house. There were no blinds, which as a child you don't think of that stuff like that, right? And we were moving into the house, pile of boxes in the room, just put the aquarium with the lizards, 2 lizards on top of the pile of boxes, right in front of the window, James.
Oh, man.
No window coverings. My dad got real mad at my older brother because he was 12 when we moved here. And they were his lizards or whatever, and the lizards got fried in the sun.
Oh, no.
And my dad was just like, how could you not pay attention to the fact that you were just putting these poor creatures right in front of a window?
How could you not take care of the life in front of you, my guy?
Anyway.
That's...
Wow. Sorry to my older brother if he's listening for bringing up a traumatic childhood event.
Little trauma there.
Yeah.
I
Anyway.
had the only since we're on the subject of pets real quick, the only pet that I had growing up was a hamster, and we had her for I think a couple of years. She died when I was 5, so it's been I basically didn't have pets growing up, although we did love our hamster.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jennifer.
Okay.
Rest in peace, Jennifer.
This hamster's name was just Jennifer?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't remember why, but that's what we named our hamster. We should have gone with at least Sergeant Jennifer or something. But anyway, so that's the only one. But my in-laws have had dogs, and I've grown very attached to those dogs. King Charles Cavalier Spaniels.
Oh, yeah.
Love calves now because of them.
I saw one this morning when I took Rocky to the vet.
They're so cute, and they're not like they can get barky and they have little high barks, but they're not like super yappy like you picture those kind of tiny dogs can be, right? They're not like a Chihuahua or whatever, Yorkie, those kind of yappy little dogs. They're a lot less annoying, I guess, in that way, and they just love being
They're cuddle
with
bugs,
you.
man.
They love being with you.
They were literally bred to be like the lap dogs of royalty.
Exactly.
So that's what their whole existence has been designed around for centuries.
They just want to cuddle up next to you, put their butt next to your thigh, and and just have you pet them all day. And it's amazing. Love calves because of them. So one of them that when I joined the family, they had a calf named Zoe, and for whatever reason, she got real attached to me right away, and it was years that she'd been part of the family before I did, and so special connection. She passed a few years ago. That messed me up. That's the first time that I've had loved ones pass, as I've mentioned before on the air. So I kind of was always like, how sad really can you get when a pet dies? And it's like, you can get about as sad.
It sneaks up on you, man.
It's amazing. It's crazy. So anyway,
even when
those are my pet experiences.
Even when you think you're ready for it, but fingers crossed, just gastrointestinal issues. I think it's going to be okay.
Let's not put that out there for what's his name again, Rocky.
Rocky. Yeah.
Let's not put that mojo out in the universe for Rocky. He'll get through this. He's gonna
be fine. Also, 6 months old yesterday. Took him to the vet, and probably pretty dehydrated and empty stomach because he hasn't been doing well in the gastric distress since yesterday. 91 pounds. 91 pounds.
Let's go.
6-month-old. Well done.
Did I give a
what's the weight update?
Height and weight. We need the ding from the Dan Patrick show.
Set it over under on
all right.
the little guy.
All right. So, you're the over under king. Let me give you when he his. I'll remind you what his weight was when he was born. 4 pounds 7 ounces.
Yep, just a little guy.
He had his 2-month appointment last week.
Okay.
So in 2 months, from 4 pounds to over under what?
Okay, I'm setting the over under at 6.9.
Okay, 6.9, way over. He's
nice.
Over. He's almost 10 pounds.
Boy.
Let's go. I feel like every time I update you, he's like a few ounces away from the next pound.
Yeah. All right.
So
I should have set the over at 10, 9.5.
Yeah,
is he over or under 9.5?
He's about 9.5. Last time we weighed him, he's 11. He had 11 ounces, 9 pounds 11 ounces.
Okay, all right.
So the boy's growing real good. We're so excited.
We'd love to hear that.
You know the percentiles and the milestones and stuff. In the 2-week appointment, he wasn't on the board at all.
He was under.
He was under
the board.
He was under everything because he was still under 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Or maybe just over. He's now like he's on the board now. He's like 20-something percentile, which is still small, but like I'll take it, man. I think that's a heck of a growth.
We're talking comeback here. That's what we're doing.
Don't call it a comeback.
All right. That's like
Owen's coming for you.
Yeah. It's going to be, this is 2-month appointment, 4-month appointment. It'll be 50th percentile.
Yeah.
6-month appointment.
150th percentile.
At some point, he's going to be.
As you pointed out before, I'm not a small.
You're a
I'm
man
not a
of
small
size.
guy, and there's a lot of. And I mentioned a lot of people in my family really tall, and some really big like me. And likelihood that he's a really small guy forever is low.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. As long as we're setting in poorly executed. That's I lose a James. Peterson
I thought you were
going
to go with like 8 or 8.5.
James Peterson bonus point.
6.5
I went way too
terrible.
conservative. 6.9 first of all.
Okay, 6.9.
But it still wasn't good. So that's I lose a bonus point for that. But since we started with the number, and everyone send good vibes my puppy's way. But we're going to focus our over-unders this week on Utah's defense. And let's just start with the big one, scoring defense. Will Utah football allow over or under 22.5 points per game in this year's Big 12 season? I'm setting the over-under for points per game allowed by Utah's defense at 22.5. 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. Let me know what you think of that. We'll flesh out that conversation as the show progresses. Show today and every day, by the way, is brought to you by Big Willie's, 1717 South Main. Get over there. Tell them OC sent you. They're going to take good care of you. They're going to give you something off their delicious craft menu of either food or cocktails or both. You can watch whatever is on television in the sports world. Right now, there's a lot of kind of big news happening in the sports world. We're going to get to another broadcast deal. We barely scratched the surface. We barely even touched on the ESPN and NFL Network and NFL Red Zone thing that happened last week. Now, much more entrenched in my world, my secondary world. The UFC's got a new broadcast deal that I think will be interesting to people who are not fight fans because it changes the model by which combat sports are distributed in a very, very significant way. So we're going to get to that on the show. Ari Temkin's going to swing by. Scott Mitchell's going to swing by. We'll talk some over-under numbers and everything else going on in the world. So I've set the defensive number at 22.5 points per game allowed by Utah's defense. How did I come to that total? Well, again, I like to take the averages, and I'm trying to be relatively conservative here and not expect way too much from Utah's defense, although we've come to a point in life where we're kind of spoiled on expecting a lot from Utah's defense. Going back to 2016. Why to 2016, you ask? Well, because my favorite stats website is only that old. It goes back, CFB Stats goes back to 2016. In the Pac-12 conference, Utah had the number 4 scoring defense in the conference that year, gave up 23.9 points. 2017, 23.2 points. So the over in both of those years. As people know, 2018, 2019, that's when it really started to get good in the Pac-12 for the University of Utah. 2018, conference runner-up year, 19.4 points per game, second only to the eventual conference champions, Washington, who gave up a paltry 16.4 points per game that year. In 2019, when you lost to Oregon in the conference championship game, the University of Utah gave up 15 points per game. The whole year long, Utah gave up 25 touchdowns. And until, very famously, until that conference championship game against Oregon, not a single team had a 100-yard rusher against Utah until the conference championship game. And then I think C.J. Verdell broke all of our hearts, right? If I'm not mistaken, they'd only given up one rushing touchdown on the year to that point. I could be wrong about that one. But in 14 games, that 2019 Utah defense gave up 25 touchdowns total and 11 field goals. That is crazy.
They were so good, OC, and I was so thrilled for that team all year long up until the very end, the conference championship game and the bowl game. That USC loss notwithstanding, it was so fun to see that group put together a season like that because of the heartbreak against Washington in the inexplicable deflection pick six that was the difference in the game. The non-call on the pass interference at the end of the game, that was such a rough ending to that 2018 season, and basically the same group being able to, minus Cody Barton, minus Chase Hansen, great players there, but almost the same core group to be able to have this season that they had up until that conference championship game was so fun to watch, and I could not have felt better for those guys.
Yeah, 15 points per game is not good. That's great. If you could pull that off as a team, woo, that is fantastic. And then it gets even more interesting as we get towards, the years that I think are even more relevant here, because the 2021 conference championship year for the University of Utah, they would have hit the over on the number I'm setting. 22.6 points per game. Utah gave up 22.6 points per game in the 2021 season, which I will still say is the better of the two conference championship years for Utah. You relied on fewer tiebreakers, even though both Rose Bowls were losses. That first one was a better game, was a more interesting game. Maybe the novelty of it, whatever. So that first Pac-12 championship year, you would have hit the over at 22.6 points per game. The second year, 21.4 points per game, so under on that one. And then in 2023, remember, 2023, we didn't like that year, although we didn't know what was to come in 2024.
Yeah, you prefer 23 to last year for sure.
But in 2023, again, a year that you just did not like for Utah, 19.3 points per game this defense gave up. In 2024, making the move to the new conference, of course, the University of Utah surrendered 20.7 points per game. So in a lot of these years, you're hitting the under. You go back to the early Pac-12 years, they're hitting the over. You go back to the Mountain West Conference years, there's a lot of unders. I'm setting it at 22.5 for several reasons. One, because you take some of the averages here. And two, because I look at, well, what would make you one of the top half defenses in the conference? BYU led the conference last year in points per game defensively. They had the number one scoring defense in the conference, 19.6 points per game. Much to the chagrin of everyone listening today, Jay Hill deserves his flowers. He was an incredible defensive coach and presence in his second year as D coordinator down at BYU. It really kind of fleshed itself out, and they had 19.6 points per game. Utah was right behind them. And again, as all of you know, that was a Utah team with no offense. That was a Utah team with the worst rushing offense in the conference from a scoring perspective, with a bottom half of everything offensive category. And still your team gave up fewer than 21 points per game. So I'm giving ample wiggle room, I think, here in 2025. But I bet, James, 95% of the responses come in on the under. But I want you to think about it carefully. Because remember, this Utah offense is supposed to be a little bit faster paced. This Utah offense is probably supposed to give you and your opponent an extra possession per game. This is not make it as long as make the ball control thing as long as you can. It's not supposed to be that way. Now we'll see how it manifests itself. I believe what Kyle Whittingham says and believe what Jason Beck says when they tell us, as both of them have, like, no, we're just going to let that offense run how it's supposed to be run. I believe that right now. Will I believe that if Utah takes a loss that Kyle Whittingham doesn't think they should have taken because the offense scored too quick or because there were too many possessions or something like that in the game? Well, I will leave it open for interpretation when we get there. But I think this Big 12 conference as a whole is more dangerous this year from a depth perspective, and it was pretty dangerous last year from a depth perspective. But I think when you look at what Utah is going to be going up against on that schedule, and you look at the relative uncertainty of the defensive front, I allow for an extra 1.5, 2 points per game over what I might have set this number at. So 22.5 would still have made Utah the fourth best defense in the league. And you're going to find, James, last week I set all these offensive over-unders, and every single time I was like, guess where that puts them if they can hit this number right in the middle. Offensively, I'm okay with this team being right in the middle. Defensively, we all know that if Utah's in the middle defensively in the conference, that's a bad year.
Well, especially if the offense is in the middle. One of those areas has to be at the top, and obviously with Utah, with Morgan Scalley, a defensive coordinator, Kyle Whittingham, head coach, it's got to be the defense if one of them's going to be at the top.
I mean, and there's good reason. There's precedent for me to believe that they should be there because we've seen it for 21 years where this team butters its bread. And we've seen by the numbers, you can go back to 2016 like I did for this particular question. You can go back longer than that. You can go back 21 years. And very rarely is Utah in the important defensive categories anywhere outside the top half of whatever conference they were in. And most of the time, they're a top 4 or top 5 team in that conference. And sometimes in special years, Utah's a top 5 or 10 team nationally in those important defensive categories. And even in years where it's like not super okay, not a great, not a conference championship year, they're still top 25 in a lot of these important categories. So all I'm asking with this over-under is, do you think that Utah's defense will be top 4 in the Big 12 conference? I'm not going to give you middle of the pack defensively. Our expectations have to be higher than that.
You're going top 4, not top 5. You're saying in that top 4 is where these.
You got to be the top 25% of the conference in points per game, in rush yards per game, in turnovers. We're going to get to all these numbers this week, but scoring defense is what we're starting with. On offense, we did it with scoring offense. And remember, I asked people last week, can you add a touchdown of production to every game this year? Can you average that? Can this offense score an extra touchdown per game? And the overwhelming response was, yeah, we think that's the reality. Even if you give up more points per game defensively than you did last year, and this over-under is set higher than last year's total, even if you give up more than you gave up last year on average, remember, you'd have been a 10-win team with an extra touchdown in your offense last year, maybe an 11-win team. That's still the case. You'd still be at least a 10-win team if you gave up 22.5 points per game and you scored, obviously, what we're talking about, 30 points per game.
30 to 31 points a game.
Yeah. 30.5, right? That's where we set it, I think, or 29.5.
And some people on the text line and on Twitter, as you read and as you saw scrolling through OC, are really bullish on this among our listeners, among Utah fans. Some people said, I think you could have set the over-under at 34.5. I would have taken the over. Make it 35. I'm not sure I'm there yet. That's a little bit too much of a leap for me to take. But I think that there's a good chance that they do hit the over on what you said, 30.5. I still would, if I were betting, I'd probably bet the under, but just slightly under. And we'll see how that goes if that's the case.
Defensively, 22.5 points per game, you taking the over or the under?
So you said it was 19 last year?
It was 20.6.
Oh, 20.6 last year?
It was 19.7. Sorry, it's 20.7. It was 19.6 for BYU. It was 20.7.
Oh, that's what I mixed up because you read both of them.
Arizona State was 22.6. So if you came in at 22.6, again, that's the over. You'd be right there with Arizona State. You'd be a top 4 team in the conference. Houston, the terrible Houston Cougars that couldn't do a damn thing offensively.
They were good on defense.
They gave up 22.9 points per game. Again, you also have to have a little bit of balance. Houston ended up being the bottom dwellers.
Houston and Utah had very similar seasons. We'll just say it that way. And unfortunately, Houston ended up on top barely in the game that they played. I think I'm going to go under. I think that they could be around 20 points per game again. And the main reason for that is there's just less question marks on this defense as there are on the offense. And so even though there are question marks, we've talked about, and the coaches have talked about, certainly in the spring, the concerns about depth and defensive tackle. Of course, there are guys that left. One of them going to the rival. We don't need to talk about that right now in that position room. But just the pedigree of this program and that position being one of them, the interior defensive lineman, like they figure it out. Safeties we talked about last year, the pedigree of that room, corners. When there's been question marks going into a season last year, in fact, there was so much consternation among the fan base of, oh, we don't have Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki both left. Oh, what are we going to do at safety? It's like, relax, everybody. Morgan Scalley knows how to recruit and coach safeties. And guess what? The safeties were really good last year. I think we'll see the same with some of these question marks, including the interior defensive linemen. So I think for those reasons, I think that they could be around where they were last year, if not better, 20-something or 20-point-something points per game, if not better than that.
Okay, so far, 877-353-0700. Everyone agrees with you, save one. 9708, you're the dissenting opinion right now, but this is a well-thought-out answer. And by the way, it's not an answer that says, oh, I think they're going to suck, but I think this is an answer that is trying to be realistic. Taking the over, says 9708. I don't think Utah, the defense is as good this year. I don't think Utah is going to be as dominant in time of possession under Beck. That one is the bigger question for me. I think that from a player production standpoint, from a talent standpoint, you're very close to where you were last year. And hopefully, that's me knocking on wood, Utah fans, healthier, right? I think you can easily underestimate, because I did, how much better a comfortable and healthy Lander Barton looks and how many more plays he makes than when he's just like out there because he's supposed to be. Same thing with last year for Van Fillinger, right? I think that the linebacking core this year is better because they're healthier. You lost Lavani Demooney last year. 2 years ago, he was your leading tackler. You lost him last year. You had Karene Reed for half the games. You had Lander Barton healthy for half the games. Jonnu Hall was growing into the position, literally and figuratively. So your linebacking core, I think, is really set this year. Your defensive line, while this year there's not as much name value, name recognition, there's no Junior Tafuna coming back, you're like, oh my gosh, Junior Tafuna played 7 games last year. So I think you're okay on the defensive line, although there's that small question mark because we just don't know if Jonah Lea'ea and Aliki Vamahi and Dallas Vakalahi and Carson Kaufusi are like what we're accustomed to.
We got to see them do it on the field before we're comfortable and confident about them. But I think, I think the last offseason was a good comparison, cross comparison in position rooms. All the worries that people had about, yes, you lost 2 really good safeties in Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki, but like Utah replaced them with 2 really good safeties. I think that it's totally fair to have the expectation that losing 2 really good but 2 really good starting interior defensive linemen, that Morgan Scalley and Luther Ellis and company replaced them with 2 or more really good defensive tackles.
So I think you could take the over and still believe the defense is as good or better than it was last year, because the time of possession thing does matter. And
it's a good point brought up by the texter.
The pace of a game absolutely does matter. And the style of Big 12 play and the level of competition in the Big 12. The way that, so last year, Arizona State ended up being the best team in the conference, and Arizona State in a lot of games last year played a Kyle Whittingham offense. They were just like, let's just pound this rock, because they had the guy to do it. Kenny Dillingham is the perfect kind of coach because he doesn't overthink things. He's a creative play caller. He's a damn near genius when it comes to talent evaluation and development. Before it was on a budget, now he's getting a little bit more help. And obviously he's crazy enthusiastic and is one of the rising stars in the industry right now at his age. But he's also a guy that's pragmatic. And he's just like, oh, we got the best player on the field right here with Cam Scadaboo. I'm just going to keep giving him the ball until it doesn't work anymore. And I know when it stops working, we have other options. So Arizona State was a team last year that didn't score as many points as they're probably expecting to score this year, as they're hoping to score this year, because they were totally fine playing ball control. It worked out just fine for them. We saw it happen. And this year, even the best team in the conference, I'm using them as the example, but they're not the only one. The best team in the conference is probably going to be like, yeah, we got to throw it around a little bit more. We got to balance it out a little bit more. We're probably not going to have as many 9-minute drives this year because we don't have Cam Scadaboo. So that changes the way these games play. That changes the way your defense, even if they're awesome, even if they're top 1, 2, 3, 4 in the conference, that changes the number next to their points per game production. So you could still take the over and think that Utah has a good defense. I think their defense is going to be great this year. I think that it's going to be great in a different way than what we saw last year, because last year they were great in hanging on like pit bulls. You ever seen that thing where people they hang like a chew toy in a tree and they let their dog just hang on it and bounce up and down? You ever seen that, James?
Yeah.
It's always like some backwoods guy who's just like, watch this. He's got like a piece of raw chicken on a rope, and he lets the dog jump up, and it just locks its jaws on and hangs there until it gets bored. That's what Utah's defense was last year. They're like, we're towing this line, and we're just going to hold hold for as long as we can. But the offense didn't give them any love, so they could only hold for so long. This year's defense is going to be making plays in conjunction with an offense that also does so. And that might change the way the games are paced, and I'm totally fine with that. Over under 22.5 points per game allowed by Utah's defense. Tell me what you think at Real OC Sports or at 877-353-0700. Let's go, baby. We're starting it off hot on a Monday. Ari Temkin joins us on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Monday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show. We welcome Ari Temkin back. He's going to be joining us on Mondays, so we're getting on our college football schedule now here in the preseason. Ari, welcome again. How are you?
I'm great. What's going on, OC?
Well, we got an AP poll to pick apart. Are you ready for this?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we won't spend that much time picking it apart. I'm not overly surprised by the Big 12's placement here for those who have not yet seen the preseason AP poll. Texas debuts at number 1, which we'll start there. I did not know this was the first time the Longhorns had ever been number 1 in the initial AP preseason poll. That actually shocks me. That surprises me, but here they are. Congrats, Sark.
Yeah, I'm with you. And even for somebody that lived in Austin and covered the Longhorns for 5 years, also shocked to find out that they'd never been number 1 in the preseason top 25. I mean, I guess the one year that stands out would have been when they won the title over USC, but obviously that USC team had won the championship the year before, so it wouldn't make sense for anybody to be number 1 preseason beyond USC. And yeah, I mean, in recent history, they've had some overrated teams that have underachieved, but so very surprised as well that they're number 1 in the coaches poll and the AP top 25 preseason poll for the first time ever. But let's also remember that nobody, unless it's Texas A&M, has done less with more talent than Texas and Texas A&M over the last decade plus.
Yes. Thank you, A&M, for that. We appreciate that. By the way, A&M 19 for those keeping score in the AP preseason poll. So let's get to the Big 12. Like in the coaches poll, Arizona, the top-ranked team, Arizona State, the top-ranked team, they come in at number 11 in the AP poll, where they came in the coaches poll. Kansas State is 17. Iowa State is 22. Texas Tech is 23. So 4 Big 12 teams ranked by the AP in the preseason. Underrated, overrated, properly rated as a whole conference in your mind?
I would say underrated, but no surprises there. I mean, I picked Baylor to win the Big 12, and obviously they're one of the 3 teams, or 4, that are in the just receiving votes category. In fact, 3 of them, I believe Utah, BYU, and Baylor, basically take up the rear at 26, 27, and 28 in terms of other receiving votes. I mean, Baylor's the hottest team in college football. They did lose and get kind of boat raced a little bit by Ole Miss in the Sugar Bowl, but the fact that they're not, on this list to me in the top 25 says that the voters aren't paying attention a whole heck of a lot to what's happening, west of the Mississippi. I also think it's important to note that basically 70% of all of the AP voters are coming east of the Mississippi River. So, yeah, probably a big reason why Utah, BYU, and Big 12 schools that are on that western side are underrated, because they're just not getting enough representation from the voters at large. I get that there's more people on the east side of the Mississippi River, but I'm sure a lot of those folks aren't staying up to watch these games, which is something that obviously hurt the Pac-12 in years past and will now hurt the Big 12 West.
So the presence of those 4 teams and the absence of the ones that you mentioned, Texas Tech has been a major topic of conversation in this offseason. To me, this is a vote based on what they were able to do in the transfer portal. And obviously what they were able to do in the transfer portal was because of money they have from boosters, and one in particular. So is this, I guess, in a convoluted way, is this a well-executed purchasing of a preseason ranking by Texas Tech?
Yeah, great phrasing there, OC. Hard to disagree with you. I mean, look, and when you look at the top of the rankings, a big part of why, let's say, Ohio State is 3 and Georgia is 5 and, Michigan is even 14, and Miami at 10 is recruiting rankings. I mean, Ohio State basically lost the entire team. Michigan lost a ton of players. Miami, too, they lost the number 1 overall pick, as we talked about on Thursday. So the reason why these teams find themselves in the top 15 is based on recruiting rankings. So, yeah, I mean, I think Tech not only buying itself into the top 25 with what they did in the portal, but for future seasons as well, they'll take notice, because, yeah, the AP seems to take a ton of stock, put a ton of stock into recruiting rankings. And that, look, what's funny, OC, is, and you and I both know this, but like, the AP poll shouldn't matter as much as it does, but it does. It's not just a perception thing. I mean, it plays into, when the rankings are released for the first time for the college football playoff, it plays into the college football playoff rankings. And so, I'm of the belief that you can have the preseason poll fine, but you should not basically judge, week 0 and week 1 as if you already had a preseason poll. You should sort of judge it independently and not as a starting point, because I think, what happens is some of these teams kind of find themselves on the outside looking in, that aren't getting enough love they probably should have, and takes them too long to get in there, and vice versa, or some teams that probably aren't very good, Florida State, it was like 3 or 4 weeks last year where they were still in the AP top 25. So it's like a birth rate for some of these teams for some reason. So again, it wouldn't be such a big deal. We could just sit here and bellyache about it if it wasn't such a big deal, but it is because it plays into the perception, and college football perception is reality. And these college football playoff rankings that come out that, later in the season are going to be a reflection of the AP.
And they have been every year that I've paid attention to this poll. So since I was a young kid, and now I think the comfort I take here is that now, even though you're absolutely right, there is at least a playoff spot guaranteed for one team in the Big 12 conference for now. And there was a time when, I'll use the University of Utah as an example. You could use TCU or Boise State or whoever you want that were from those BCS busting type years where all those teams, you started either at the very, very bottom of the top 25 or you were outside the top 25 in the preseason. And people didn't start learning your name or caring about you or paying attention to the highlights on ESPN because they weren't played on ESPN until like week 4 or 5 when the Horned Frogs are 5-0 or the Utes are 4-0 or, hey, look at these Boise State Broncos. They're 5-0. And that's like the delayed reaction in those days made it so that the highest you could climb if you were one of those mid-major teams, and I know there's more to it than just the preseason perception here, but the highest you could climb by the end of the year, by the time you were 10-0 or 11-0 or 12-0, was like into the top 10, whereas all of these teams that are on this list, if they're 9, 10, 11-0, they'll be in the top 5. They'll be in the top 6. They'll be in the top 7. So I'm with you that the upward climb just it's more fraught when your name doesn't appear on this meaningless preseason list, which I guess means it's not meaningless.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It should be meaningless. This should just be something we complain about and yell about, but it's not. It absolutely plays into the entire regular season. It's the reason that the Big 12 didn't get multiple bids last year, despite some of the resumes of some of these teams. Arizona State was too far out. Even Utah, BYU, and Baylor in the outside looking in, like, what do they have to do if Utah wins week 1, which we both agree they will? Is beating a mediocre at best UCLA team on the road? Is that going to be good enough to knock them in the top 25? It should be. Again, they're probably a team that should start there already. And then when can they get a big enough win later to then justify an even larger jump? That's the issue here. Is it feels like if you start in the preseason rankings top 25, you have to do a lot in order to find yourself out of it. Meanwhile, on the other side of it, it takes a long time to make up for that. And it's a different reality for Utah and for BYU and for TCU, as you brought up, in terms of being in the Big 12 versus being either independent or at a group of 5 level. But it feels like the Big 12 still at a major upward climb. And then you start to think about the conspiracy pieces, which you don't want to think about and don't want to acknowledge that those are real, but it's hard to look away from them when it's like, oh, okay, you're starting the Big 12 here so that, by the end of the season, you're still looking at a situation where you're going to get multiple SEC, multiple Big 10, and you can make the case the Big 12 doesn't deserve multiple bids. I argued before the summer started that this would be a year for the Big 12 to get multiple bids. After seeing just 4 teams in the top 25, I find that hard to believe.
All right, Temkin's our guest for a couple more minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about all these preseason expectations being set. The Heisman Trophy last year went to a Big 12 player, as you're well aware. He was a once-in-a-generation two-way type talent and played for a coach and a team that was a media darling for a good portion of his career with Colorado. What's it going to take for somebody to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony from the Big 12 Conference this year? Because the betting odds are not favoring that being a reality.
Which is funny because you'd think this year more than last year or any other year that this could be a Big 12 year because of the depth of the quarterback position. Yeah. Watching some NFL preseason games this weekend, which, that's my problem, not yours, but there were a ton of Big 12 running backs, that we saw, like Corey Kiner and R.J. Harvey, Devin Neal, so last year, it's funny that the Big 12 won the Heisman when, you think preseason-wise, there just wasn't a quarterback in that conversation other than Shedeur. And now it's like, man, there's a bunch of guys I could see that should be in that conversation depending on how the season goes. But you're right. In terms of the Vegas odds, that's just not there. And again, it plays into the perception thing about the Big 12 where it's, definitely thought of and it shouldn't be as a lesser conference. And I think the fix to that, as people start to sort of figure that out, would be consistency at the top. Truthfully, this conference needs a little bit more predictability. And the issue is that has not been the case. And last year was no different. So, I think this conference, if it proves over time, like Arizona State is good again, if Utah has a bounce back year, I think, some would give it the mulligan for last year. Then I think you're going to get a little bit more preseason hype and preseason expectations. The problem is this is just such an unpredictable conference. And just looking at the schedules of these teams, trying to figure out what their records are, that's the reason the over-under numbers are so, no other conference looks like the Big 12 from a total perspective, because, everybody's just right there at 5.5, 6.5, 7.5 wins. So I think that plays into all the stuff we talk about from a preseason standpoint, especially the Heisman.
I don't think I've asked you yet. How do you feel about Farmageddon being played in Dublin?
And it's a top 25 matchup. I don't like it, but I get it. The part I don't like, and it's multifaceted. I don't like that they're playing it week 0. You look at let's take two teams in particular that finished the season much stronger in the Big 12 than they started, TCU and Baylor. TCU was 3-3 and giving up about 40 points a game defensively before they finished the season giving up about 19 points per game in the back half of the season last year and looked a lot better and finished with 9 wins. Baylor, again, same deal, very hot team, started off slow with major questions about Dave Aranda's future. So, you are not, and you know this obviously, OC, you are not the best version of yourself week 0, week 1, and week 2. That's the reason you play these non-conference matchups early in the season, because you're trying to figure out the type of team you have. In the case of Baylor last year, they had Daquan Finn starting at quarterback and Richard Reese starting at running back. Meanwhile, Bryson Washington became an absolute stud at running back for them, and Sawyer Robertson should be in the preseason, Heisman Trophy conversation. So, that game's played week 0, Baylor and Iowa State, or Baylor and Kansas State, that's a disaster, because we're not getting even close to the level of the true team that those are going to be. The football season is a journey, and you have ebbs and flows, and there's injuries and all different kinds of things that play into the type of team that you're going to become. And so, week 0 is just not a game to be playing, a huge conference game that's been one of the most competitive rivalry games the Big 12 has on an annual basis in Farmageddon. It's also a game that should probably be played on campus in the snow. So late in the season, two teams that are used to playing in cold weather playing in the snow. That's what we expect. Now, here's the reason they're doing it, because this is going to be one of the best week 0 matchups from a hype standpoint that we've ever seen. Even with Georgia Tech and Florida State last year, these are two top 25 teams. I don't think we've ever seen two top 25 teams match up in week 0. It's going to do a huge television rating because there's no other games on beyond Fresno State and Kansas. But in terms of games people would want to watch, it's the only one that's on. And the important piece here is the Big 12 needs more and more of those, because the windows the Big 12 has are not great. And so they're not going to find themselves in many spots where they're going to have, huge TV opportunities. So I think it's years down the road, but the narrative the Big 12 is trying to paint here is, we can command a really big audience. So that's why we deserve X amount more dollars in our next television deal. That deal's not up until 2031. My guess is they'll go to market 2029-ish. But still, that's all part of this conversation. It's cooking the books to a degree. It is a huge game, week 0, competing against nobody else in a window where you're just not going to have many of those throughout the course of the rest of the season. So I think it's a necessary evil, but yeah, I hate it. It should be played late in the season in the snow on campus.
Last thing before I let you go, I'm sure even my own listeners hate hearing me say this all the time. I die on the hill of the fact that when you're a Pac-12 of recent years, or now the current Big 12, it really, really helps you as a conference if there's premier talent, individual names, players that people want to watch. Travis Hunter helped the Big 12 conference last year immensely. Christian McCaffrey got done dirty by some Heisman voters, but he at least kept people up late at night to watch the highlights. You know what I mean? This year, the preseason All-America list is out. Several of them are out. The ESPN one just came out. And, there's second team, honorable mention type attention being paid. Spencer Fano from Utah seems to be the only guy who's getting kind of unanimous preseason. Not that matters a ton. But the fact that the nation isn't being told, like, hey, these guys on these Big 12 teams are must watch. How much does that hurt the conference in the same sort of perception line we've been discussing for the last 15 minutes?
Yeah, it's such a great point, OC. I mean, there's no question that, like, just the fans at large, right? Like, everybody's going to watch the teams that they root for. Like, that's a given. It's how do you get the rest of college football to tune into your game because they're interested in the sport, but maybe not interested in the teams that are playing, and that's stars. You know, and Colorado, for whatever reason, still, I mean, we know what the reason is. It's Deion. But they're still driving a huge audience. I mean, it's crazy. So we talked about an article today where there was more bettors that bet the over on Colorado and more bettors that bet the under on Colorado. So the majority of the action was on Colorado for both over and under totals this year. And I mean, amazingly, you know, if you want to fade the public, good luck because you'd be fading both in this case. So that's, you know, but Colorado still is a draw like that. And it's obviously partly because of Deion. I mean, I think you're right. Like, this conference is being slept on from a quarterback perspective. Like, even, you know, this is a year that the Big 12 quarterbacks should have been the leaders of the pack in terms of these preseason lists. And when you look at it and people are ranking their top quarterbacks or top most important players, I mean, it's just this heavy dosage of Garrett Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik and, you know,
Drew Aller
at Ohio State. Yeah, Drew Aller. I mean, it's complete. And it's, I mean, part of it is just this belief of like, well, they play in the Big Ten, they play in the SEC. That's real big boy football. And it's a complete, you know, I mean, it's an absolute joke. The Big 12 with all of its quarterbacks, and it's, you know, I mean, all these elite players that are getting, you know, dragged because of it. And yeah, I mean, I hope over time, obviously, people start paying attention to the quarterbacks in this conference because there's so many good ones and a lot of playmakers. But it very much feels like the conference is being overlooked just for the sake of the conference being overlooked. And look, there's just not a lot of immediate attention on the Big 12. You know, I mean, Big 12 radio was on Sirius XM. Now we're on TuneIn because Sirius XM investing heavily into the Big 10 and the SEC, right? Like, this is not like a conspiracy theory. This is actually happening. There's less media attention towards the Big 12, and more there's being spent by media companies at the biggest level, CBS, you know, Rivals on 3, Yahoo now, to cover the Big 10 and to cover the SEC. And so we have to make more noise and be louder about our teams and not just agree with everybody else at large. Like, well, those players are better because they play in the better conference. It's a joke.
I can't wait till we have actual football and we could stop worrying about just the perception battle because that figures out a lot. If you start winning, you start making big plays, and these guys get to show the talent that they have. I think it'll all work out. We'll have some fun, and you'll be with us the whole season, Ari.
I appreciate that very much. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, I can't wait. And I'm trying to lobby with TuneIn to get us out to do our show for the Holy War. We can still call it the Holy War, right?
Yeah, it is the Holy War. And look, you guys can stay at my house. All right, tell them they'll save on hotels. We'll have a slumber party. Let's go.
I'm in. That sounds like a blast. I cannot wait.
All right, thanks, Ari. Appreciate you.
Later, OC. Thank you.
Big 12 insider Ari Temkin. You can hear him on TuneIn on the Big 12 insider role, man, and made some really strong points there. He and I are drinking the same Kool-Aid when it comes to Big 12 perception nationally and the ways that you can improve that or combat some of the problems you have. We're 19 days away from Utah football season kicking off, which means we are 12 days away from that Farmageddon game. That's an opportunity for the conference. Hopefully people are watching in Ireland.
Yeah, and I hadn't considered what he had said about Brett Yormark in the Big 12, saying if we get two of our premier teams on week 0 in the biggest game on week 0, we get more eyeballs, and that helps in the media deal. I mean, that's a savvy move by Brett Yormark. I hadn't considered that till he brought that up.
It's a solid game to have scheduled for that time slot. The in Ireland thing, you're never going to convince me was the better idea. But if you had to go to Ireland in order to get a top 25 game in that time slot,
they've been doing the Dublin game with Northwestern and Nebraska and Notre Dame the past few years. I'm not sure that's going away. So that
great, fine.
You had to do that.
Whatever. Like I think it's great to have a game in Dublin. I just think it should be Notre Dame every time.
Right.
Or like at Boston College because there's
something.
Like
something that ties Irish Catholics to the game.
I mean,
or Irish people in general. to the
Ireland in
game.
general just be like, okay, so do you know anyone in Iowa? Nope.
I've seen Ted Lasso. That's the only thing I know about Kansas sports.
Anyway,
By the way, speaking of week 0, I did confirm it's the Fresno State-Kansas game that we'll have here on the station.
All right.
So the biggest game on week 0.
So Farmageddon is cool. It's all right. But the biggest game in week 0 can be heard right here on ESPN 792 on FM. It is the Kansas Hawks.
Fresno State.
And Fresno State. Good enough. Okay, we'll double, and then we'll come back with Scott Mitchell on ESPN 792 on FM. Welcome in Scott Mitchell to the Sean O'Connell Show. If you missed Down and Dirty today, or you missed any part of the Sean O'Connell Show, or you missed any part of the drive, you can find us at ESPN700sports.com in the on-demand section. You should already have downloaded the ESPN 700 app, and you can find whatever you need there. Scott had some great conversation this morning about the NFL preseason, powerful moments where teams are just like, oh, bad injury, let's just let the clock run out here. That's not something we touched on this show. But, Scott, love listening to you on my way into work. How are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm glad you're listener number one, so I appreciate it.
No, that's not true. My dog was listening with me when we were headed to the vet this morning. So you have at least two of us. We just had Ari Temkin on, Big 12 Insider, and I was asking him about some of this with the coaches poll came out last week. We all know that the coaches only pay a certain level of attention. The AP poll, the top 25 AP preseason poll is out, and it reflects a lot of the thinking that we saw in the coaches poll. Arizona State, top Big 12 team at number 11, and everyone else falls in behind that. Utah, BYU, Baylor, among the teams that are just on the cusp, but the wrong side of it, not right in the top 25 right now. What do you think of where the Big 12 sits in the AP poll as it stands on the first day of release?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a safe bet, where you have kind of what's happened in the past. And these early polls, they kind of have to go based off of what's happened in the past. I think with Arizona State, the fact that they won the conference, they have the quarterback back, they have, they're going to be up there. A lot of these teams that have returning production at the quarterback position they're typically going to be higher. But the thing that I just watched, even before Utah got into the Big 12, is it never ends up the way that it starts. And I think so much of it is just because there's so much, I don't even want to say parity. I just want to say that from top to bottom, the league's competitive. And so you have to be lucky. You have to play good. You have to stay injury free. You have to kind of have, a favorable schedule. And it's usually someone that's kind of out of the radar or someone you don't really think of that tends to play well. I don't know. This is my personal opinion about things, but I think that, I don't have scientific data. I just kind of my observation. It just seems that take Caleb Williams is a good example. When you have someone who one year has a really good year, for whatever reason, they just don't quite seem to have the same second year. You see that a lot. And so a team like I look at Arizona State, they have a pretty favorable schedule, but everyone's gunning for them this year, and they don't hide from anyone. They don't. They had some lucky breaks. They won a really close game in Arizona last year against Utah. Do they win those close games again this year? And it's just funny how success just for so many college teams kind of breeds complacency, and it'll be fascinating to see if they can answer to it, because a lot of teams like Utah, man, I don't know that Kyle Whittingham and the folks up on the Hill have been more hungry than they are this year. Like they're just not happy at all about last year and what happened, and they seem to be more mature. They seem to be really focused and determined, and that goes a long way. When you're counted out and you're fired up, you win a lot of football games with that formula.
Scott, switching gears just a teeny bit from the AP Top 25 poll, the news dump that came out over the weekend, Utah football has named its captains for the 2025 season. Now, we know there's the Leadership Council, then there's the four captains. I think in the past that there's been seasons where it was five, but there's four captains, and it's the Fano brothers, it's Lander Barton, and it's Jaron Kump. And I don't think that there's a lot of people who would protest any of those names being added, but, your starting quarterback is usually a captain. In this case, he's not. We know that his leadership has been praised and is totally accepted and things like that. But from an official standpoint, at least, he's not a game day captain right now. Does that have any concrete meaning for you?
Oh, it's. I was kind of hoping he would be. It felt like he was certainly a guy who had a lot. People were really believing in and buying into him. In some ways, I think it's a good thing for him to kind of have maybe a less of a distraction. And maybe there's a little bit of his teammates say, still haven't done anything. You need to show us something here. All these other players, Jaron Kump has played every position on the offensive line. He's been in the program. He really understands it. Lander, the same thing. The Fano brothers, when you mentioned their name, it almost sounds like a comedy routine, because they are kind of a little comedy and they're lighthearted, but there's a soul to them, and they're really bought into the Utah program, and they're real leaders. I mean, I would say all of these players are leaders, and you think two of them are actually offensive linemen, and that kind of speaks to the strength of maybe this whole entire team. So I don't know they got it wrong with the captains. I don't know that it's a bad thing that Devin Dampier isn't one of them.
How much can captains like the ones we talked about, like especially Kump, like I know that it's an honor for players to be named a captain, and I know that as a team you want guys like this that are not only popular amongst their teammates, but they're also excellent performers on the field. But is there a concrete result to having the right captains? Like, can having the right guys out at the coin toss really help you win football games?
Well, if you look at a year ago, I believe Brant Keithy and Cam Rising were captains.
Until they got shut down, and then they elevated Mekhi Bernard. Yeah.
And so, but you really run into when things are tough, and you need to find a way to find a different gear. When it gets down and dirty, right? You need the guys that have been in the program, that are those senior leaders, the ones that don't panic, the ones that are like, they need to rally the troops. They need to speak up. There are just times in a season when guys need to say something, and so often if you don't, guys get isolated. They get in their own heads. They need to rally the troops. They need to say, hey, everything's going to be okay. They need to say, pick it up, guys. This isn't acceptable, kind of thing. And when you have those guys that are in the trenches who are those, kind of tough type of players, Lander Barton, the position he plays, it really speaks to respect, and people, when they say things, it matters. And I absolutely believe it makes a difference who's leading your team. Coach Whittingham is the constant, right? He's going to be there regardless. And until his team takes ownership of being the team, until they take ownership of, winning and performing on the field, he can be the greatest coach in the world. But they've got to buy into it. And getting the right leaders goes a long way to getting your team to buy into culture, to buy into winning, to buy into, being called out when you need to be called out.
They had their camp scrimmage this Saturday, closed scrimmage. Fans didn't get to watch. Maybe if you're a Scott Mitchell type, you get a little eyes-on situation. A bunch of former players were out there as the new Players Association is being formed at the University of Utah to help out with NIL fundraising and job placement and all these things. But what should we take away as a fan base, as people who are curious, from scrimmage number 1 of fall camp?
I think it's good for the players to get that kind of work. I think it's really good for the coaches, to really get a better feel. You just heard a lot of talk about some new names. A lot of new names have come up recently. J.J. Buchanan wide receiver. Yeah, some of the wide. I wanted to call him Thibodeau, but it's Tobias
Merriweather.
Yes, thank you. Some of those, and that's the value of those scrimmages, is to get a better feel, I think, for the guys more that are newer to the program, who it looks like can really have an impact, and that's what you really hope for. And it feels like, I don't want to be brutally hard or blunt about this, but they got no one at the wide receiver position. Like, it didn't, like, you looked at spring practice and you're like, this does not look very good. And one guy you had left, and so it's a huge concern. And to find people, and you hope that they're better than average. Like, you hope that it's not because the other guys are just so bad and that they're standing out already. You hope that they're pretty good and they're standing out. And so there's certainly a lot of opportunity there at the wide receiver position. And then some of these guys like Wayshawn Parker, who kind of, he maybe was in second gear in the spring, and for him, some of these other guys to kind of get involved and pick things up a little bit. I think you got to feel good about that from maybe that first scrimmage.
I'm gonna bite down on what you just talked about with the the perception of what weapons you have versus the reality of what weapons you have, because when you're playing against your own defense and you're playing against limited looks and things like that, it can change. Like, there's reason for spring games to look like spring games and for all of us to get excited because Morgan Scalley's not really blitzing people, and look, there's a big connection between a quarterback that you like and a wide receiver that you hope you like and things like that. You've been at every level of football. You've coached football. And when you've got a room that, like, hey, those guys are talented guys, but we don't really know what we have. As a quarterback, as an offensive coordinator, how do you maximize it? How do you bring those guys along and test it out the right way against a really high-quality defense without, losing morale, without discouraging them? Like, how do you bring guys along the right way when there's just not returning production?
Well, it's hard sometimes when you do have a really good defense. Like, it really is. It's hard to develop things. I mean, I've been on teams where the defense was so good that it didn't matter who. It was really hard to get in because so often they're very disruptive, and you're just wanting to get timing and rhythm with new guys. And when you have such a disruptive defense, it's almost impossible. And it's hard to gain that confidence because practice reps are just so valuable all the time. But you really almost have to, and it's not completely fair, but you really have to say, look, here are the guys, and we may be missing someone. We may not get a chance to develop someone because, we only have so much time. We're 18, 19 days away from a game. That's just not very much time. And so you really have to just say, these are our guys. and come hell or high water, we're gonna these are our guys, and we just got to go with it. And maybe you luck into a guy just doesn't work out, and you just finally just say, okay, we've got to make a change. Kind of with the quarterback situation a few years ago with Charlie Brewer, it was like, they gave him plenty of opportunities to really say yes or no, he's our guy. And of course it hurt Utah in some non-conference games, but they figured it out. And so I think that's the strategy you have to go into. At least that's what I would do. I'd just say, I get a pretty good sense of who's talented and who's not. And let's go with these guys. Let's really coach them up, rep them up, and see what we have. And hopefully it works out for us.
Scott Mitchell, host of Down and Dirty here on ESPN 700. And, of course, NFL quarterback, Utah legend, analyst on all of our Utah radio broadcasts, which are coming in 19 days now, right here on your home of the Utes. Okay, so if you're figuring out all of that with the weapons and the expectation. I set the over-under number for the defense today, and I was being, I thought, very conservative here. 22.5 points allowed per game by the Utah defense in 2025. Would you take the over or the under on that? Last year was 20.7 points allowed per game, and obviously did not have a lot of offensive support. Of course, this offensive scheme is less about clock control and that kind of thing, so I think that allows for more opponents' possessions and maybe a couple extra points in a game here or there. But where would you set your over or under, or would you take the over under at 22.5?
Man, that's a good number. It's one of those things where I think it's pretty close, but if the offense actually is more productive, I think that number might go down even. And I think they are going to be. It's all about the defensive line. Can these guys who seems like they have a lot of depth, not sure they have a lot of experience, but I think if we can get, some quality production on the defensive line, I think it'd be even better. And it's really two things. It's about consistently maintaining gap integrity to stop the run, and it's getting a pass rush. And those two things didn't happen last year, and that defense was still really solid. So I think if you can improve that a little bit, I know there's a big emphasis on turning over the ball, and I would not be surprised to see Utah get a lot more production from the turnover margin, and those two things. I think I've talked myself into under. I'm going to go the under on that.
Well, you're not alone. A lot of people taking the under. Maybe I said it a little bit too high. Utah's had a Pac-12 championship year where they were 23.5 points a game that they gave up. They've had a Pac-12 championship year where they were giving up shy of 20 points per game. So it's like, how do you win? That's the most important thing as long as you win. Spencer Fano's name appeared on another preseason All-America list, and I'm running out of ways to ask the question about him and his partner in crime on the other side, Caleb Lomu, and what kind of effect they can have. But when you're talking about one guy getting the bulk of the attention in an offensive line room where that group is all about communication, chemistry, etc., is there any potential issue here?
No, I don't think so. What if these guys were smart and they realize, look, rising tides raise all ships? There are a lot of guys that have a lot of scouts watching. They go, hey, we came to watch Spencer Fano, and man, we really like the guard. like you're going to get a lot of eyeballs looking at you, even if you're not Spencer Fano or Caleb Lomu. So these other guys ride the ship, and it may be something that could change your whole fortune and whole life just because of it. That's not an uncommon thing to have happen. So, and most of the time, offensive linemen, they're probably about the most tight knit group, and they're the type of position group that's they all take a badge of honor if one of their own is recognized and has success. The petty ones are wide receivers and DBs. So offensive linemen can handle and accept if one of their own is a superstar.
Spencer obviously plays right tackle. That's ideal for you as a lefty.
Absolutely, he is my best friend, and there's a bit of an advantage to that. Believe it or not, it is helpful.
Obviously, you're doing okay at both tackle positions. But did you ever were any of your teams, especially at the NFL level, like, hey, our most talented tackle usually plays left. We're gonna see if he can swap over to the other side to protect your blind side.
Never had a guy swap, but Zephros Moss, when I was in Detroit, handled Reggie White as probably good as anyone ever in the NFL. His body type he was a real beast against Reggie White. He was so strong. He had such a low center of gravity, and Reggie White just couldn't bully him and manhandle him, and he was the right tackle. So he did a good job.
That works out nice for Scott Mitchell. I love to hear it. All right. Appreciate your time and appreciate you giving me good stuff to listen to as I drive in on Down and Dirty. Thank you.
I'll give you a shout out. So when you listen, but thank you. It's always a pleasure, Sean.
Scott Mitchell, you'll hear him on every Utah football broadcast this season, starting 19 days from now when you kick off against UCLA at night at the Rose Bowl. And maybe we'll take some time with this tomorrow because there's too much to get to today. But there's not that many great week 1 games. So potentially, right, people might actually be looking at that Utah game to finish off their night. If you got a TV in the bedroom on the East Coast, you might see the Utes. Here, I'm expecting everyone to be at Big Willie's at 1717 South Main to watch that opening game. Or, if you've got the time and the bandwidth and the money, go down to the Rose Bowl. It's always a good night in Pasadena if you get an opportunity. Before we take a quick one here, and we're going to come back and talk about some of the observations James and I were discussing about this new AP Top 25 poll, not just the Big 12 connections, but the poll itself. A reminder, we've got a celebration of cannabis culture, music, and community coming to Canna Fan Fest in the heart of Salt Lake City at the Granary Live September 27th. It's a one-day festival, live music, Crooked Kings, Changing Lanes, Analia Brown, and more. ESPN700sports.com for the full lineup of performances. They got ticket links there and much more. Canna Fan Fest, September 27th in Salt Lake City. We're growing into a real big city. I wonder how the cops are going to handle that.
Yeah, you have an event that celebrates cannabis culture. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one.
Because, it's you could get a cannabis card in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
You can get a medical card. But we're not like Denver or Vegas or New York City or San Francisco where it's just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Not on the surface level anyway. So everyone go out there, have fun, enjoy it responsibly. But that's gonna be interesting at Granary Live.
If you're into that, if you're into the culture, let alone the substance there. If you're into the culture, it's a place for you.
Canna Fan Fest, Granary Live, September 27th. More to come on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network. All right, Sean O'Connell show. The AP poll is out. Utah is not in the top 25 for the preseason. As I have said many times in many ways, that's fine. That is the better version of a preseason outlook for Utah football, where you're just outside. People kind of know you're lurking, and then when
They're
you're 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, then maybe you start making your appearances in the top 25. It probably actually won't even take 3-0. It probably get like Utah is now with Kyle Whittingham still at the helm. It's like the media wants to give them respect now. They're a team that people are like, okay, we're waiting for them to be.
You're a 2-time Power Conference champion, Power 4, Power 5 Conference champion, and you have the longevity and the history of success that Kyle Whittingham has.
The longevity is really what does it. They go,
you're getting that benefit of the doubt. You like you said, people want to.
They go, you know what? This guy, we know him, we like him. He stands for what's good and right in college football, and we're going to do that. We're gonna put him in the top 25, but they have to be given a reason. In the preseason, they didn't have enough of a reason yet. So that's great for Utah.
Second
Chip on
in
the
the
shoulder, you get you get a little bit of an attitude that you get to create that bulletin board material at camp. I'm telling you, there's nothing better than being able to tell a bunch of talented guys who work incredibly hard and are in that 18 to 24-year-old range, because there are still some guys that old at Utah that hey, nobody believes in you, because that stuff, when you're 40, you're just like, dude, who cares? But when you're that age and you're 60% of your thinking is done by testosterone, you're just like, what do you mean they don't believe in me?
Yeah,
what do you mean they don't think I'm going to be good?
You want to prove people wrong.
What do you mean my name didn't appear? What are you trying to say? It matters. It does. I mean, so that's great for Utah.
Yeah.
BYU just on the outside, Baylor just on the outside, Utah just on the outside. The top 25 with 4 Big 12 teams in it, Arizona State being the highest ranked of them.
Yeah, the 3 top others receiving votes teams are Big 12 teams, and the 3 of them that lots of national people give a good chance to win the conference. BYU first in the others receiving votes, if I'm not mistaken, then Utah, then Baylor. So Utah still in a great spot, even without being ranked. Like you said, arguably better spot than being ranked in the 20s. You're at least you're getting enough respect that you're getting a lot of votes, but Kyle Whittingham and the coaching staff can also tell these guys, look at that, no one thinks you're good enough. Let's prove them wrong.
A quick tally, 9 SEC teams in the preseason top 25.
Yeah, 9.
5 Big 12 teams. 5 Big 10 teams. Yeah. There's going to be, and the Big 10 has a nice little mix of teams that are right at the top, that are considered national championship contenders, and then some distribution through the rest of the poll as the also-rans. The ACC, to the chagrin of myself and anyone who gets triggered by the similarities between the Big 12 and the Pac-12 for a lot of years, Clemson is back. People think Miami is back. I don't. SMU is making a case for themselves, even though they shouldn't get full credit as an ACC member. Actually, the ACC shouldn't get full credit for SMU because they're not even paying them to be in the conference.
I know they didn't even get. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, according to their deal, I don't think they were entitled to the playoff money that they got for the conference, the playoff shares that they earned for the conference by making the playoff last year. So they're ACC by name, but not necessarily a full member of the
Texas 1, Penn State 2, Ohio State 3, Clemson 4, Georgia 5. The next 5 are Notre Dame, Oregon, Alabama, LSU, Miami. Arizona State, as I've already said, makes the first Big 12 appearance at number 11. And then it's it's Kansas State at 17, Iowa State at 22, Texas Tech at 23. Here's the thing. Iowa State is now the team that you always have to pay attention to, and you always have to expect that they're going to be good. Matt Campbell is a good coach. I hate that they announced publicly that they're getting him at a discount. I think that's the wrong thing to do. We talked about that last week, but he's a really good coach. And they're at 22, and 22 is probably, if we're honest, probably right around where they're going to finish, somewhere between like 14 and 25 for Iowa State. Because even with an experienced quarterback coming back, history does not completely get tossed out. They have not won a conference that they've been in since World War I, basically. That drives me up a wall if I'm a Cyclones fan. We're like, hey, we're good every year. Yep, you are. When's the last time you won anything of significance? Like, it starts to get insulting when people are like, it's been 20 years since you won anything. If you have to say it's been 40 years since you won anything, like it is for UCLA basketball, right? That hurts. That twists the knife. If people are like, it's been more than 100 years since you won anything of significance.
I mean, Utah fans know this a little bit. That whole they've never beat USC in the Coliseum. It was over 100 years, and they finally did it, and they've won the last two in the Coliseum. But the Utah fans know that a little bit, but that's not near the same as not winning your conference.
The last time Iowa State won a conference championship, people were talking about like the University of Chicago as being one of the football powers in the world.
Yeah. I think Rutgers was still probably awesome, and Penn they were still probably awesome in football.
Yale and Harvard were powerhouses.
Ivy League schools.
Army was killing everybody. They're just like, yeah, man, that's the last time you won anything.
That's crazy.
That's not good. Anyway, I'm actually intrigued.
I actually miscounted. There are 10 SEC teams in the poll. I left out one. I missed one. Double-digit teams in a poll. I'm not sure that's ever happened for a conference, preseason poll or otherwise.
That is so dumb.
Now, two of them, Texas and Oklahoma, a couple years ago would not have been SEC schools, but they are now, so they count.
Yeah, I mean, they count. That's fine. Texas being ranked number one in the preseason for the very first time in history, that's my shocking news today I learned.
Yeah, I would have thought no idea.
I would have thought that any of the last 70 years, you could have been like, yeah, Texas is number one this year.
Sometime in the 80s, sometime in the 90s. Like,
this is the first time
Ari brought up the Vince Young year when they beat USC, but I mean,
he also brought up the very astute point that you could not rank USC any lower than one in that preseason.
Yeah.
Because of what they were bringing back from an already national championship squad.
They were back-to-back national champions. The first one, of course, a shared title and then outright title the year after. Yeah. So that would have been the only year you might go, are you sure Texas wasn't ranked there? But if those that were around would go, yeah, of course they weren't ranked there. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, and Lindale White were returning from the reigning national champion USC team.
Here's the thing. Boise State, good job, guys.
Yeah.
Good for Boise State, man. We in the Big 12 conference, and before that in the Pac-12 conference, have spent a decade now worrying, questioning how possible it is to stay relevant in college football when your television contract is only giving you $30 million a year, or only giving you, one guaranteed spot effectively in the college football playoff. Boise State, without even the benefits that BYU has and that Utah has and that Arizona State has found a way with now multiple coaching staffs to stay relevant as a mid-major. Like, I don't like when Utah plays them because it's the worst possible kind of game. It's a game you can lose and you don't get any credit if you win it. I like when BYU plays them because of that same reason. But Boise State is what Utah was before they got the invite. They're what TCU was before they got the invite. And because they're in Boise, Idaho, not because they don't have smart, talented, incredible people working in that football program, but because they're in a market that will never, ever, 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 ever be nationally relevant, It doesn't matter how good their football team is. They had the second best individual player in all of college football last year. And they battled their way to a college football playoff in the first year of an expanded college football playoff. They accounted well for themselves at every step of the road. And somehow, while everyone else is worrying about the house burning down around them, Boise State is just like that pristine house plant in the corner that never gets touched by the flames. You're just like, oh, wow, look at this. They're still here.
Yeah.
And
couple of years they broke the BCS just like Utah did in the mid to late 2000s. They have not been ranked. They've not been a top 25 team every season since the second time that they broke the BCS and Utah joined the Pac-12, BYU went independent, all that. But they've been ranked most of those years still in the preseason or at some point in the season. They've won. They've been the power in the Mountain West Conference in that time. They do deserve their flowers for staying relevant, winning, being the team in their conference, group of five or otherwise, for the past 20 years. And even though everything around them is telling them, every person around them is telling them, you are not worthy of relevance anymore, they've stayed relevant.
We spent a lot of time talking with Ari Temkin earlier in the show about, the perception battle that Utah and every other member of the Big 12 Conference has to fight. And we've spent, this segment talking about how just ridiculous some of the preferential treatment for the SEC and I guess to a somewhat lesser extent, a significantly lesser extent, honestly, for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
The Big Ten has produced a national champion the last couple of years, and the Big Ten is not being given the same love that the SEC is. So that's interesting to me. But
they're getting the second most love.
Yeah, I take a perverse satisfaction in the idea that USC is outside of the top 25 in the preseason because they have the benefit of the doubt. USC gets the supreme benefit of the doubt. Like for years, Texas did. For so many years, the University of Texas, who now deserves to be talked about the way they're being talked about.
They are back.
They're back, for sure. And USC is behind BYU, Utah, Baylor, and Louisville in the others receiving votes category.
Yeah, double-digit other receiving votes, not triple-digit.
I'm happy to see that because I'm not a Lincoln Riley guy. USC is the evil empire that has somehow, despite the money, not been able to keep up with the Joneses. Do they have a ton of talent? Yes. Do I wish that Utah had the resources they had to spend on the talent? Absolutely, I do. But this is fascinating to me to see USC where they're at. The AP Top 25 poll is very similar to the coaches' top 25 poll. Arizona State, the highest ranked team in the conference, in the Big 12 conference, comes in at number 11 in both of those polls.
Do we think that the coaches of each of all the schools just contacted their AP rep, their AP voter, and said, "Hey, will you fill out my bracket?"
Well,
do we think that's why it's so similar?
I don't think it is because,
no,
interestingly enough, BYU is more highly thought of by the coaching community.
That's a good point.
Utah is thought of lesser than in the coaching community, according to this poll.
Yeah, and either way, Utah is slightly behind BYU in both polls, in the total votes, but a lot closer to being ranked in the AP poll than the coaches.
I mean, they're right behind BYU in the preseason rankings, and I keep saying preseason rankings because I have to remind myself, along with all of you, how meaningless they are. But it's others receiving votes. BYU had 156 points in the system. Utah had 144. In the coaches poll, the others receiving votes were Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisville, USC, and then Utah. So
yeah, it's actually significantly higher in the
coaches
AP
poll is a
poll.
pretty big difference. Iowa State comes in at 21. Kansas State comes in at 20 as opposed to 17 in the AP poll. So Kansas State's more highly thought of by the AP, kind of like Utah is. than they are by the coaches. Iowa State is a spot behind their placement in the coaches poll. So the coaches like Iowa State more than the AP does. BYU is much more highly thought of by the coaching community right now, or by their SIDs or whatever. They're a number 23 ranked team. Texas Tech is almost the same. 23 in the AP poll, 24 in the coaches poll, and Texas Tech is now basically under this insane microscope like Texas A&M was, where Joey McGuire, it's like, hey, dude, so we're going to need you to win. We're going to need you to win right bleeping now, because you have the sexiest offseason additions of anybody in all of college football. So
and we just built a second target in Lubbock. So big things are happening in Lubbock.
We got 2 targets. So now do it now. That's Texas Tech has an insane amount of pressure, like very few teams are going to see in 2025. That coaching staff, Joey McGuire in particular, is now being told, hey, like I just gushed about Boise State. Boise State, it's like, dude, you're playing with house money. You're respected. You're loved. People are giving you high fives and flowers. And it's not because you have anything.
And
Texas Tech
if you drop it, like you said, house money, if you drop out of the top 25, not a big deal. We still think very highly of you. The stakes are not near as high as they are for Texas Tech.
All right. Utah did name their captains. I addressed this with Scott Mitchell. I want to give you my thoughts on the 4 people that were named Utah football captains, and most importantly, the one who wasn't. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show continuing here on a Monday. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Utah football captains were named on the weekend. They had a scrimmage up there at Rice-Eccles Stadium. There was a gathering of former players that are establishing a players' association that, if you heard Trevor Riley's conversation with Spence Checketts last week, the aim is for every player to benefit from the knowledge and the connections that these former players have. For the former players to get more involved in steering the future of Utah football. And, it's guys that you know, guys that you love. It's Sly, it's Matt Martinez, it's Jesse Boone, it's Trevor Riley. I saw Darrell Mack in the picture up there. There's, it's a bunch of guys who know what's going on around this football team and the landscape of college football now. And I'm very curious to see how that manifests itself. But the conversation I wanted to have was with it's kind of a news dumpy time to put it out there to say, all right, Utah football captains have been named, and it's the Fano brothers, Lander Barton, and Jaron Kump. I put out a tweet question, and I'm not trying to be, muckraking and stirring up business here. Is there anyone on or off that list whose name you are surprised to see or not surprised to see? Would those, if you were on this team, and none of us are, would you have voted the same way on these captains? 877-353-0700. I want to make it clear that you got to pick 4 captains. You can't have everybody be a captain. And I actually hate, and I mean I hate, when teams have rotating captains and like every other week they roll different people out there. I can't stand that. Your captains should be your captains because that's how it functions in the small society of a college football team. There are dudes that everyone listens to. There are dudes that everyone looks to, and that doesn't change every single week. Now, sometimes it grows and evolves over the course of a season because somebody plays their way into having a greater voice, or maybe an injury takes somebody out of the locker room, and that voice needs to be replaced. You saw that with Utah last year. Mekhi Bernard stepped into the void that was filled, or that needed to be filled, when Brant Keithy and Cam Rising were gone. Jaron Kump stepped into that void as well. He's a captain again this year. Jaron Kump is not the sexy pick. He is not going to be the highlight maker. He's not going to be the big fan favorite because he's playing right there in the middle of the formation. You're not going to see a ton of what he does. But he's a guy who's been in the program for, 6 years now? He has seen the changes. He has been a constant in the Utah football culture. He's one of those guys where I'm like, yep, makes perfect sense. Centers are often the vocal leader of an offensive line, even if the guys around him are supposed to be more talented. He's started at every position on the offensive line, at least a game, over the course of his career. You could make a pretty easy case that nobody has given more to this program or done more in this program to this point than Jaron Kump. So, all right, checks pretty much every dang box for me. The Lander Barton one, I mean, if you listen to the show last year after I got the show, I spent so much time talking about what Lander Barton should be for this team, what he could be for this team. I think that this is the year he actually will be that. After talking with Lander at Big 12 Media Days, talking with his sister when she came in here, Danny Drews.
Shout out to Danny Drews.
When she came in and was talking about her own career, but also was willing to talk about, her brothers.
Yeah, love that she entertained those questions from you because that segment was about her and her teammate and that Love Volleyball League. But she knows who she is, and so I love that she was willing to entertain those
and a lot of the conversation,
and give those insights.
Yeah, a lot of the conversation we had was just like
it was certainly about the volleyball,
about the athletic, but about what it's like to be an athlete, and like she's been through the stuff that her brother went through last year, and anyway, it was a great insight. I think Lander Barton is he seems like he's a good mix of the lead by example and now grown into the vocal leader a little bit more. Earlier in his career, by his own admission, he was like, yeah, it's better to let Karene be the talker, it might still be on some level better to let Levani be the talker because he's comfortable in that role. And we've seen him play that role at Stanford and at Utah. He was kind of press ganged into it, though. He was forced into it because of injuries in the past. So Levani's on the leadership council. He's not a captain. Lander Barton, again, checks every box. There's no way you could tell me that Lander Barton should not be a defensive captain. He's probably the best defensive player on this team if he's healthy.
Offensive captain Lander Barton?
No. No, not quite. We're not going to do that. Is there anyone whose name you thought you'd see and you didn't see? For me, and I know that part of being a captain is stuff that we will never see, that the fan doesn't get to see, that it's a locker room stuff, it's workouts like in the weight room,
players,
the tone setter.
Player voted on too,
Yeah,
right?
of
So
course,
obviously there's going to be a lot of things
that's one thing
we don't see.
That's one thing that this coaching staff definitely does. The players decide who the captains are. The coaching staff doesn't. This is not the first time, by the way, by any stretch of the imagination, that Utah football doesn't have the starting quarterback as the captain. In fact, there was, 3 years in a row where Utah had the weirdest situation ever where the backup quarterback was the captain and the guy who got named starter was not a captain. That was so strange. That happened when Charlie Brewer got the nod over Cam Rising. That happened way back when Tyler Huntley got the nod over Troy Williams.
Wasn't Drew Lisk also a captain? And he was not a guy. I think 1 year Drew Lisk might have been a captain, and he was obviously not in the running to be a starter.
So, I mean, this coaching staff lets the team decide who it is. For me, I don't mean this in any insulting way. Don't twist my words. Don't change things around. Like, Spencer Fano is maybe the top overall talent on the whole team. So probably an inevitability that you were going to let him be the guy that goes and walks out for the coin toss and you put your best foot forward and you say, this top 10 pick next year, you got to deal with that every day.
Yeah.
And his teammates love him.
Yeah, he and Lander are probably the most obvious ones from an outside looking in.
I'm a little, and I don't mean it in an insulting way at all, I'm a little surprised that Logan Fano is a captain.
Yeah. Me too.
I look at Logan and I see a good player,
charismatic,
who is obviously very charismatic, and I'm not questioning the decision, but if I was asked to select who are going to be the Utah football captains for 2025, I would have done the low-hanging fruit thing. And I would have been like, it's the guys they brought to Big 12 Media Days. Yeah. It's Devin Dampier, it's Smith Snowden, it's Lander Barton, and it's Spencer Fano. Respect to Kump, I probably would have left you off because you're not the headliner, but him being there instead of Devin, I'm totally fine with. There's a lot that goes into that in my mind where Devin is a guy that everyone signs off on. He's a great leader. He's incredible. He's on the leadership council. He was put on the leadership council 2 weeks after he arrived here. We love him. We trust him. We will follow him. But this is the Utah football culture. This is the Utah football team. Like, how long have you paid your dues? It's going to be prohibitively difficult for someone who transfers in an offseason to be a captain immediately, because there's just other guys who've been here longer, have different relationships, have longer standing, tighter relationships, who the coaches trust a little bit more. They trust Devin to run this offense. Do they trust Devin on the same level they trust Jaron Kump? Like, hey, man, we have a freshman. We can't find him. Do you know where he's at? Let's see. Let's help this kid out. Like, they're not calling Devin Dampier first. They're calling Jaron Kump first for that. You know?
It's a good point by you. Also, leadership council, that's coaches decided, right? Or is that also player decided?
Player decided.
Oh, so both are player decided. Leadership council and captains. All
and
right.
Look, the coaches do have influence on both. Like,
Absolutely.
if a guy's got some crazy stuff going on behind the scenes
and he gets the most votes, they're gonna veto it.
They're
right?
gonna be like, well, he's got like a court case coming. We're not gonna have him be a captain right now. But this is the decision. Most of the guys on the leadership council, I think actually all the guys except Nate Ritchie, are like absolute definitive day one starters for this team.
But Nate's to your point about Jerem Kump, Nate's a guy who's been with this program for a long time. This will be his 4th year playing in the program, but 5th year part of the program because he was on his mission for 2 of those years. Yeah.
And here's the thing. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the substance of the Utah football culture actually becomes a thing instead of it being a point that talking heads like me regurgitate on the radio. When you say the culture of a program, it manifests itself here in this democratic election of who we want to be our captains. It's not an insult to Devin Dampier that he's not there. It's not an indictment against his leadership ability.
I mean, if he's on the leadership council, obviously not.
But it means nothing to like, oh, he's not as good as people think he is. He hasn't had the impact that everyone's saying he is. It's not that at all. It's these other guys we recognize collectively as a roster, all of us, and probably Devin too. He strikes me as the guy that when he got the ballot, he didn't write his own name down. You know what I mean? This is a manifestation of what Kyle Whittingham wants his program to be, where like, look, we're happy to have the newcomers. We're excited about the additions and the potential and the novelty and what this new team looks like. But you know what really also matters to us a lot is passing the connection from Luther Ellis's playing days all the way to now, of Alex Smith and Eric Weddle and Paris Warren and Christian Cox and Sly and all these guys. Like, the lineage still matters to Utah football. And there's 10 teams in the country that, there's actually 3 teams in the country that you can go that far back. It's Iowa, Utah, and Oklahoma State alone that you can go that far back. But there's probably only 10 teams in the country that even are searching for that, are hoping for that, are like, yeah, man, this is what we want you to be, and we want these guys who heard it from those guys, who heard it from those guys, who heard it from those guys, to pass on the oral tradition that becomes the culture here. This is where it matters and manifests itself. And I'm not going to lie, I had a long conversation about this over the weekend about like, hey man, like they didn't vote Devin Dampier in, they didn't vote Smith Snowden in. Those are going to be the fan picks. That's like the popular pick. Instead, you know what I bet? I bet that when you go to a workout at the University of Utah, Logan Fano is the dude that makes you work out harder. And that's why he's a captain. I bet that Spencer and Logan bring in this energy that you're just like, man, I was up all night. These are college kids, maybe a little hungover or something like that. My girlfriend's bugging me, whatever it is. And I bet those are the guys that when you get in there, they're like, let's go. Turn up the music. We're having fun. Have a good attitude. It's the only way. You can't, from a production standpoint, explain why Logan Fano is a captain on this team. And again, I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying it as a compliment to him because he's a rising junior who gave you, a solid season last year. Solid. But when's the last time a guy with 2.5 sacks became a captain at the University of Utah? From the previous year. Like this is meaningful. What do real captains give you? We'll take a break and we'll talk about what captains like this should give Utah in terms of wins and losses. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday, 877-353-0700. I put the question out there. Whose name are you surprised not to see listed among the captains? There are a couple of people who thought that Dampier and Snowden not being on there, a little bit surprising. The Leadership Council kind of encompasses that like pseudo captain status. So if you're involved in the Leadership Council, it's a soft landing, it's a consolation prize kind of thing. And all the guys that you would think are there. But it's kind of like a college football playoff where you got to draw the line somewhere, right? And for like some teams do 5, some teams do the rotating captain thing, which I think is totally the wrong call. And I want to make it abundantly clear with all of this that I always say when it comes to things like this, you defer to the team itself. You let them elect who they want to be their captains. And if it's people you've never even heard of, good. That probably means a stronger locker room. If it's just a bunch of, like, I'm very curious to see what Texas Tech captains look like this year. If it's just like, oh, we put Romello Height and David Bailey out there because they're the best players. Well, does he know your name? Like 70th guy on the roster?
You talked about, you bring that aspect of captaincy up. You talk a lot about you're standing on that 04 Utah football team, walk on, bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
But a guy like Morgan Scalley still knows you today, but not just because you're in media, but because he remembers you on that team.
And by the way, most of you know how practices are divided up. The starting defense does not spend a lot of time with the scout team defense. Because
Which you were on the scout team defense.
I was on the scout team defense that whole year.
Yeah.
The only time me and Morgan Scalley were teammates, we spent almost no practice time together. Morgan took it upon himself, and there are guys on the team like this now. Kenneth Scott was very famous for this when he was widely recognized as one of the great leaders on that team.
Shout out to Gooby.
Even if Gooby wasn't the best player on that team, he was like the best friend, the best leader on that team because he cared about people. That does matter, right? And Morgan was that way, and that's why he's going to be a really good coach because he understands that there's a purpose to all the parts in a machine.
Yeah, I just bring that up to say
not every captain does.
I bring that up to say if the person isn't obvious to you, like we've pointed out, maybe Jerem Kump and Logan Fano are the two least obvious ones from the outside looking in, like that those guys certainly should be captains. It's probably because they have those kind of aspects that we don't see because we're not on the team.
I mean, maybe we'll get a chance to ask Kyle Whittingham this. If he was making the list of captains, and he doesn't, he lets the team decide, would his list have been the guys that came to Big 12 Media Days? Or would it have been the guys that are elected captains on the team? So congratulations to all of them who got named captain, by the way. That's an incredible honor. And that's something that I think, if you're an athlete, you probably can and should carry the rest of your life. That's like, you don't actually put it on, well, you probably do actually put it on your resume. But it's something that should be a badge of honor on your own heart for your whole life. That you should be able to, when you're doubting yourself, when you're feeling like, you know what, man, the grind of work and whatever else. There was a time in my life where 100 and whatever dudes that were all doing the same thing as me chose me to be their leader, to be the best version of them. That should mean something to you for your whole life. It should be a good reminder if you need it. And by the way, if you have to go all the way back to your Little League captaincy to do it, whatever works for you. You know what I mean? But this is cool for those guys. What does having like meaningful captains that represent your culture, what does it actually do for a football team? Well, here's where it translates to wins for the University of Utah. All right? And it's probably not an extra 5 wins, but it might be an extra 1. It might be a win in the rivalry game that's going to be really tough for you, right? Having guys that know the pulse of the team and are good football players, of course, should reduce the amount of penalties you have on the field. These guys have been conducting off-season workouts together. These guys are the enforcement arm, so to speak, of what coaches are wanting your team to be discipline-wise. Your captains have to be like all right, coach has already yelled at you enough, okay? That's not working. We expect, your team needs you to be smarter than that. Don't throw your helmet. Don't hit the guy after the play. Like, yes, those things are still going to happen, but if you have good captains, it'll happen less frequently. And these captains, especially like a Jaron Kump dude, like who on that team? You've seen Shrek walking around out there. Jaron Kump is not the kind of guy that you're picking a fight with at practice.
Absolutely not.
Even if you're like one of these young D linemen, you're probably looking at him and just be like, ooh, that guy's got a mortgage.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's a man.
That's a grown ass man.
I'm still a kid. That's a man.
I'm an upset teenager right now. And that is a guy.
It's got a mortgage.
If he needs to, can discipline me aggressively. You know what I mean? Like, so.
That is my father right there.
The tomfoolery really is reduced. Like that. I mean, I'll tell you something. Everyone on the Utah football team I was a part of was afraid of Urban Meyer's wrath because he was like a lunatic. You know what I mean? But what you were equally afraid of, or needed to be equally afraid of, is if you upset Sione Pua, that was going to be a bad day for everybody. If he got worked up, that was going to be a bad day. When I was at Weber State University, everyone loved and respected Coach Mack. Coach Mack had, by that point in his career, he'd become like your grandfather. You know what I mean? Most of us were not raised by our grandfathers directly, so your grandfather didn't scare you the way your dad did.
Right.
So Coach Mack was like somewhere between your dad, who you were scared of, and your grandpa, who you were not scared of, but you loved so dearly and you wanted to impress that person. You want to please that person.
Most of the time you followed the rules anyway because of how much you love and respect that guy.
You don't want to disappoint him, but you're not scared of him.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when that is your head coach, he had one assistant coach who tried to be the hard-ass enforcer, and it didn't work. But there's a guy named David Hale. Shout out David Hale, offensive tackle at Weber State, ended up playing in the NFL, which obviously is a bigger leap from Weber State to
absolutely.
The NFL.
Shout out to David.
David Hale, you did not want to upset David Hale.
Big guy, huge guy.
Huge guy, but beyond everyone's big.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You're at a college football practice, everyone's big and scary.
Yeah.
But David Hale was the guy that you were just like, oh, crap. That play, rolling up on that ankle, like picking a fight with that guy. David Hale is going to be the one that enforces whatever he decides to enforce here, and I can't do anything about that. Like, he was a captain for us, and he wasn't mean, but it was just like, okay, like if David Hale, in fact, he's like one of the nicer guys you could find on the team, and one of those guys that made sure he knew everyone on the team, he knew everyone's name, he knew their backstory, even those of us who transferred in on short notice and things like that, was very welcoming. But also, it's like that authority that is not, it's not gifted by a contract. It's earned by the work you see them put in, by the experience that they have, by the reps that they have played, by the time in the weight room. It's a seniority that you as a player, even if you don't directly vote for that guy, which most of them do, obviously, but you endorse that because you see it. The coaches should have earned that level, but the players, the team captains, are the ones that actually have it.
It's different when your peers are showing you a good example, are holding you accountable, than when your overseers, your overlords, whatever, your bosses or your coach is showing an example and holding you accountable. It's there in a lot of ways you give a lot more respect to your peers because you're like you're just like me, but you're taking this seriously. Makes me feel like I want to take this seriously.
I'll tell you, one of the great regrets of my own athletic career, and there were plenty of them but between my junior and senior year of high school, my coach, my football coach, you do the off-season lifting program and all that kind of stuff. And we were not my senior year, we were a bad team, but we were a talented team. The team underneath us that was rising, they were the juniors when we were going to be seniors. They were really good. And so, of course, we're all going to be on the varsity team. We, the older guys, are going to be the upperclassmen, and they're going to be the ones that are filling in the gaps. And honestly, their team was better than our team. They had players that we needed to fill in certain positions and things like that. But there was this weird fracture between the upper class, my class, and the younger guys. Our class was like pretty conservative. Theirs was a bit of a wild party scene kind of group. They were better. They had like success through Little League and were championship level team. We sucked, right? So they didn't respect our ability from like a whole team standpoint. I got along with them, but my coach knew this dynamic was going to exist, okay? He brought me into his office by myself, and he said, look, you're going to be the captain on this team. You're the one who's most comfortable with the talking and things like that. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he's like, it's going to be your job to get your guys and the juniors on the same page. You're the one.
You're the bridge.
You have to be able to do it because they like you. They respect you. They think you're good enough to play with them. They don't think every one of you guys is good enough to hang with them. The kids, and that's a weird dynamic. If the younger group knows that they're better than the older group, it's hard to get the respect that you need as the older group, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, that's your job. And I took it very seriously, James. I set an example. I showed up to every offseason workout. I tried to get all those guys there unsuccessfully. I failed in the regard. The request he made for me was to bridge that gap and get those guys to play their best football, to get, what would have ended up happening was that our team would have been like probably 60% junior starting and 40% senior starting, and that we would have been better that way.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way because the juniors were just like, well, I don't care. These guys suck. We'll just play JV this year, and then next year we'll go win a state championship. And I never got them out of that mindset.
Shoot.
I never got them as a team, the whole group of them, out of that mindset. I was not able to bridge the gap. And, like, it sucked because I thought I was a good leader. And I'm like, man, I guess with these guys I wasn't. And there were, there's dynamics that just were never able to figure out. And I still have great friendships with that class of guys, and I think they're cool. But the culture between our group and that group was too different. And the risk for that existing at the University of Utah right now with these guys who've been in the program and then 42 new players coming in, you could very easily have that split, especially because last year was such a bad year.
Yeah.
Why would all of the new guys look to the old guys and say, I want to do it the way you did it? Why would they?
Particularly on the offensive side of the ball where most of those new guys are in. And some of them, most notably Devin Dampier, hey, we brought our coach to fix your mess.
Yeah, you guys were the mess. It's actually, now that I think about it, I haven't really put up, it's like kind of exactly how my high school team was.
The way, after you put it that way, I'm like, yeah, it feels like could be potential for that at University of Utah.
But there's not. But that dynamic doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist, right?
Because of the culture that's already established. Because what Kyle Whittingham has put in place was a lot better than what we had put in place, and what Jaron Kump is, and what Spencer Fano is, and what Lander Barton is. For all these new guys, they're just like, oh, geez, okay.
And apparently Logan Fano as well.
And Logan Fano.
Yeah.
These new guys are looking at those dudes and just being like, all right, this is how we got to be. So,
and that's remarkable given what you talked about now. Of course, two big differences. You're talking about teenagers in your scenario and adults, young adults in this.
We're also talking about a bunch of really good football players at the University of Utah.
Yeah.
And that Jordan High team was like, we had like 6 in my class.
Right.
That were good players,
and a head coach. All due respect to your high school head coach, not Kyle Whittingham, right? Like,
you know what, Coach Birch listens to our show sometimes, and I promise you, he doesn't think he's Kyle Whittingham.
He's not gonna think that. But anyway, like, it obviously big differences, But it is remarkable that when you put it in that context, it's remarkable that the University of Utah this season with 40-something new guys has been able, that the culture has been able to be as strong as it is, as we're reportedly it is with this new group, because you're right, these new guys could very easily have walked in and be like, okay, you guys were awful, so we're gonna fix things. We're gonna ignore you guys. If you're awesome for us, you help us out, then cool, you can gain our respect. But instead, they voted 4 guys who've been on the team and endured last season, especially two straight disappointing seasons. Last season much more disappointing than the year before. Like that speaks volumes as to the kind of leadership that those 4 guys, the other veterans on the Utah football veterans on the leadership council, and the culture that Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley and others have put together.
Well, the culture is really the thing that permeates here, and like, even with the transfer portal era, and even with bringing in 40-plus guys, right? The mantra has been, you become us, we don't become you. That sounds great, but in practicality, it's actually very, very difficult to execute when you're bringing in large numbers. If there's 8 new guys, yeah, okay, those 8 new guys better become us. When there's 40 new guys, I promise you, 40 new guys can completely bleep up a practice.
Well, like,
they can totally, especially when one of them's your starting quarterback,
absolutely.
When one of them's your number 1 wide receiver and your number 2 wide receiver and your number 3 wide receiver,
number 1 running
and
back,
your number 1 running back, and probably your number 2 running back. Like, they very easily could come in and just be like, oh, okay, so our captain is number 4, and we're going to do it his way. That divide doesn't exist for Utah football, and they deserve a ton of credit for it. And by the way, not just Utah, every coach who's doing it successfully right now deserves a ton of credit for integrating culturally with the transfer portal in real numbers. What you get from real captains, from good leadership, is what we're talking about, is the ability to do things according to your culture, according to your team blueprint, and not according to the whims of whoever gets added to the mix.
Who might be the most talented. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because the culture's already what it is, and the respect for the upperclassmen that have been through this, no matter how successful they were as a team in those times, is part of that culture that's been set at the University of Utah. It's something we take for granted, OC. I'll be honest with you. When we started this conversation today about the captains, I was not thinking about how hard any of this is until you told you made an analogy to your experience as a captain in high school, and how it a lot of new players to the team made it very hard for there to be unity. And like, we just assume that there is always going to be unity in the University of Utah. We don't even think about how difficult that is.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, my coaching staff and me and my fellow captains couldn't force it to happen. We tried, and it didn't work. We were not adequate in that effort, and it appears, and we got to play the games to see, right? And you got to probably take a loss or two to see how solid it is. But I'm a believer. I believe what's being said and what I'm seeing from Utah right now. So
and we believe in the conversations, the interactions that we've seen and had with Devin Dampier as well, one of those very talented newcomers, that this is not like he's not coming in here trying to throw his weight around. He's wanting to become a University of Utah football player, not University of Utah football team to become what he thinks they should become.
All right, we got to take a quick one. When we come back, it's not a football conversation, but it's one I'm really interested in. A new television deal was announced today that is going to alter the way that you watch combat sports, maybe forever. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Go look around your house right now and tell me if you have anything in your house, attached to your house, sitting in your house, that is sold, manufactured, guaranteed here in our home city, here in the state of Utah. Your dinner table, your appliances, your flooring. Almost certainly the answer is no. You can make that the reality with your windows because of our friends at Advanced Windows and Advanced Window Products. AdvancedWindows.com, 801-850-9100, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. The convenience and the comfort of knowing that the sales process, the manufacturing process, the guarantee and warranty process is all done right here in town. I mean, every time you drive up and down the I-15 corridor, you go right past their building. It's just on the west side of the freeway. You can look over and you see that number I just gave you, 801-850-9100, on the side of the building. Advanced Windows, run by Nate Orchard, Jake Weber, and company. They take care of our people. They take care of you. They take care of me. They take care of your window coverings, the windows themselves. They continue to improve their processes of manufacturing, of installation, of sales, the financing, all of it. They're always working hard for you, and it's done right here. You do not have that luxury with almost anything else in your home, probably with nothing else in your home. So aside from the fact that brand new windows increase the life and the value of the house you live in, increase your peace of mind knowing that your energy costs stay low, it's all done right here. And the steps between you and getting a problem fixed, if there is one, or getting a replacement if you need one, they're far fewer than any other process with any other product, especially the parts on your actual home. Advanced Windows, manufactured, sold, guaranteed, warranted, right here in town. 801-850-9100, $2,500 off, 10 windows or more. Call now and get on the schedule. All right. I don't know if this came across. James, I heard you do the update on it. I don't know if it would come across your radar as a sports fan otherwise, but the pay-per-view model for prize fights, UFC fights, have been for years and years and years. A pay-per-view model for all of the premier events, right? If you're going to get a big Conor McGregor fight, you're going to get a world title fight, you're going to see John Jones, you're going to have to pay. It started off at like $39.99, and then it was $49.99, and now it's up to like $80. And you're going to have to pay to watch the premier event that the UFC puts out there. Now, it was with Fox back in, I want to say like 2009, 2010, that they started to cross over into cable with some of their big events. But even then, it was like 4 or 5 of them were going to be on major broadcast television. A deal was announced today between Paramount, CBS, and the UFC. 7 years, $7.7 billion, and the pay-per-view model is going away. You're going to have to subscribe still to Paramount, and stuff's going to be on Paramount Plus.
The majority will be streamed on Paramount Plus, so you're going to have to pay a monthly fee to watch these, but you don't have to pay an additional fee on top of that. Some of them will be on CBS as well, but most of them streamed on Paramount.
Some of them will be simulcast on CBS. Some of the big premier events to try to grow the audience are going to be on CBS. Obviously, that's major network television.
But free. Don't have to have a monthly fee for that.
And it's just
that's pretty cool.
It's bananas. Now, if you're a sports fan, you're looking at it and you're just going like, cool, man, this is great. There's a lower barrier to entry. I get all this content for my $19 a month subscription. And sometimes I get what used to be an $80 pay-per-view, a $75 pay-per-view. Sometimes I get that for free on CBS. Yay, as a fan, wonderful, right? I don't get to just look at it that way. Not only because PFL is a competitor to the UFC, but more importantly because I was a fighter for a long time. Here's where it gets interesting for me. Remember when the WNBA was wearing those shirts at All-Star Weekend? Pay us what you owe us?
Yeah.
The UFC is now going to be getting $1.1 billion of revenue just from their television broadcasting. That's still not ticket sales. That's not gate. That's not concessions. That's not merchandise. That's not video games. That's just from the actual television deal. $1.1 billion per year over the life of this deal. Historically, the UFC has paid their fighters, going back far enough, as low as 7% of the revenues, and I think the current model is more like 19%.
After the lawsuit, of course.
So if you're a fighter, your 19% of $1.1 billion is obviously, that's better money than before. But if you were getting 45%, 49%, 50, 51%, like other professional athletes and other organizations are getting, of $1.1 billion, obviously that's collectively as a group of fighters, we're talking about this is potentially massive for MMA fighters. I mean, this could be finally even the journeyman, the lower level people in the sport being millionaires because the revenue is there. CBS and Paramount and the collective sports viewing public have decided, yes, we like this sport enough that it's worth $1 billion per year for the UFC. And that's, again, just the television revenue. And the fighters need to put those damn shirts on. Pay us what you owe us. Because this is, I mean, every deal that the UFC does is bigger and better than the last one. This one is way bigger and way better than the last one. This one is double what the last one was, effectively. The one with ESPN, who now may or may not stay in the MMA business. I'm hoping desperately they do stay in the MMA business forever. Because we're with ESPN. If they decide, oh, well, we lost the UFC, we don't want to stay, what does that mean for the PFL? Well, presumably Paramount or Amazon or Netflix or somebody else like that. But I want to be on the worldwide leader, man. Like, I'm still, even though ESPN is a little bit going the way of MTV for some people, where they're getting further and further from what their initial mission statement was, it's still bleeping ESPN.
It's still the biggest brand in sports. It's certainly in live sports. Like that's the one thing that people still and probably always will love about ESPN is the live sports. The programming with First Take, the way SportsCenter's gone, the way that SportsCenter's gone, that's way less than it used to be. But the live sports is still awesome, and you would hope that they want to stick in the MMA game, like you said, because that PFL would be the number one product for them in that sport.
Instead of being a stepchild, they'd be like, all right, let's pour some time and some marketing and all that stuff into the PFL. And you know, we're coming along, man. If you've been watching the PFL fights, we've had great fights. There was a PFL Africa event over the weekend in Johannesburg. You could stream it on our PFL app, and there were like maybe the knockout of the year in the whole world of MMA happened at that event. So we'll see how that plays out, but I'm not bringing my laundry to the airwaves for you. This is
about the UFC.
This is about
combat sports.
This is about the sport, and it's MMA. Like, this is the biggest announcement we've ever had financially in the world of mixed martial arts, and it abandons the pay-per-view model that, by the way, has been the thing used to enrich only the top level fighters. But the reason why, like, Conor McGregor and John Jones and Khabib Nurmagomedov and some of these George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, there's always been a model for the top stars in the company, the co-main event, the main event, to get pay-per-view share points, right? You get whatever it is. You get 50 cents per buy for however many buys. You get $1 per buy for however many buys we have for this event that you're headlining. And so the champion or the super popular guy would get whatever the flat rate was, whatever the show and win bonus was, and then they'd wait for the pay-per-view sales to come back and be like, oh, that sold 1.5 million pay-per-views. Brock Lesnar, thanks for coming over to the UFC for whatever it was, 3 years. Here's an extra $4 million check because you sold a bunch of pay-per-views. So now this changes the pay structure even for the guys at the very, very, very top. And knowing how the UFC is, what they're going to do is they're going to make sure those people are still taken care of so that those people don't say, wait a second, you're taking away my pay-per-view bonus?
Yeah.
I might need to re-examine the way that you do business.
Do you think it'll be like a little Paramount Plus subscription bonus thing? I don't know.
I doubt it. I think what they'll do is they'll be like, because the one thing that, Dana White doesn't ever get credit for this one, and people use him as like this evil emperor, and he's a brilliant businessman. Just look at his own investment profile and what he's done from his time being like literally like a Thai boxing, like a cardio kickboxing instructor, to now the CEO and president of the UFC. If he's not a billionaire yet, he's about to be with this deal probably.
Yeah.
So he's done really well for himself. Unfortunately, at the expense of fighters in a lot of ways. But I'm also real middle of the road on that because we all signed the damn contracts and agreed to fight for them. So in any case, they've done a really good job, especially in recent years after the fighter pay lawsuits and things like that. If you're near the top of a card now, they don't complain about money. They don't have reason to complain about money. You look at the disclosed payouts for the people at the top of the card, and it's like, oh, this person made $1 million. And fighters are not going to complain about that. Fighters are not basketball players. You talk to an NBA basketball player, they get $1 million, they're going to be like, that's ridiculous.
I need 20.
Fighters are going to be like, you give me $1 million, I'll keep my mouth shut. Yeah. So they're going to keep doing that. They're going to give everyone who, quote unquote, deserves it their millions. The question is, now that everybody in the world knows, because they're pounding their chest about this announcement, now that every sports fan in the world knows, we got $1 billion coming in every single year from just our broadcast deal. Is there going to be enough reaction to that? Like, well, okay, stop paying people $10,000 then to fight.
I question for you. There's not a fighters union.
No,
for UFC or any of these big MMA leagues.
Correct.
Right?
No, it's an individual sport. So like NASCAR doesn't have a union.
That's a good point. So it's like the other individual sports. Right?
NASCAR, I think, is the best equivalent. Some people use tennis, but it's not structured like tennis either, because in tennis you can go compete wherever you want. In tennis, you're like a free agent for your whole career.
Yeah, true.
You pay your own way to get to these. Like your sponsors pay your way, but like you get an invite when you get to a certain level. But if you're like a journeyman type tennis player trying to go win a whatever Shinnecock Hills Open, then you fly yourself there.
Yeah,
and it's like golf is that way.
Yeah.
So
golf has, you're right. Is there maybe based on what you said, maybe there's just not a possibility for that because of the nature of it being an individual sport. But I wonder if this kind of thing, what you're talking about, I wonder if this might be a precipice for some kind of organization that way where fighters can be like, hey, let's organize together, let's band together, because they have the money now and they're still not paying us enough, if that becomes the case. I'm curious what you think of the potential of a union-ish type organization that could kind of fight for these things, or is it really going to be these class action type lawsuits that are going to be their only vehicle for forever to be able to get more money if they feel like they're not getting enough?
Right now, that is the vehicle, and the UFC has a lot of political power right now, and there's a lot of reason for them to keep doing things the way they've been doing them, right? And I will say this, you got to be fair to everyone, okay? Why would Conor McGregor – I fought on the same card as Conor McGregor, all right, in Boston. He sold out the building, not me, right? 8,000 Irish people flew over from Ireland to watch him in Boston, okay? I never had that kind of fan draw. Most people never have. Even people who've become champions have never – most of them have never been able to, like, capture the imagination of the sports viewing public like Ronda Rousey, Conor McGregor, Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre. That's why I use the same names every single time. Why would Conor McGregor share his money with me? If I was in the Conor McGregor position and I was the one making $5 or $10 million every fight, and James Peterson was on the undercard, would I be like, yeah, pay me $1 million less and make sure James makes $100,000 instead of $10,000, and James' opponent makes $100,000 instead of $10,000? I'll take $1 million less. It's not a team sport. If you're a quarterback, you're like, pay me $1 million less so my left tackle can make $40 million. I don't see how it ever becomes functionally possible. I'm on a group thread right now of like 1,200 MMA fighters that are involved in this lawsuit, James. It's on a WhatsApp thread. These conversations run deep all week long, every week. And today it blew up again because of this announcement. they've been talking about this thing for 30 years now, MMA Fighters Association. I don't think it's ever going to happen because why would Conor McGregor share his money with me? Why would George St. Pierre agree to join a union with people he will never meet and can never actually help him?
It would take a group of very selfless, top of the food chain fighters for it to happen, is what it sounds like.
So anyway, big announcement. The sexy number for all of you fighters or all of you fight fans out there, $7.7 billion for 7 years. CBS and Paramount. Starting in 2026, that's where you're going to find your UFC events, even your pay-per-view events. And if you're paying close attention, watch the fallout amongst fighters and amongst the pay scale and how it is structured, because every contract in 2026 is going to have to be redone, even for those elite guys. We're going to give away some tickets next to close out the show. Then we'll turn you over to the Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Wrapping up the Sean O'Connell Show on a Monday here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. I set an over-under number for Utah defense, points per game allowed. Last year, Utah ranked where in points per game allowed in the Big 12 Conference? 877-353-0700. Where did Utah's defense ranked in points per game allowed in 2024's Big 12 season? Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up, as I said. The Drive is next, and Spence Checketts is here right in front of me, if you can believe it.
Hello, Sean.
How are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say that song that we just played is beautiful.
Okay.
And all music is beautiful, and whatever you enjoy listening to is beautiful. And up to it's eye of the beholder stuff. So I took the weekend to think about my sins.
I actually was laughing at you and Porter as I was driving home, talking about how there's like an objective good or music or bad music.
Mm-hmm. And you sent a very bullying, mean text to me.
Yeah, I did.
About the Dave Matthews Band.
Yeah.
You and I are going to go to a show. A Dave show.
I would never.
Well, I'll get tickets. I'll pay for dinner.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that was easy. Look at that. But no, I took the weekend.
I'm a hero for the free food.
Okay. Baklava shakes on me, Sean.
Yes.
I took the weekend to ponder, and I'm here on a Monday afternoon to announce that I will be better moving forward.
Wow. Look at that.
I will not, but
yeah.
All right, where did they rank last year? Where did Utah's? Because I think BYU was number 1 in the Big 12 in scoring defense a year ago.
Correct. We don't have a correct answer yet, so I can't tell you where they ranked.
Okay.
877-353-0700, 20.7, 79.46. You got the right number, so tell us where did that rank in the Big 12? You got the right number, but you didn't tell. The question was where did that rank in the Big 12? I set a new over-under higher than last year's total. I think that the offense is going to be a little bit faster paced. I think that the quarterbacks in the conference make it more of a passing league, which usually pushes point totals higher. 22.5 points per game allowed for the University of Utah by the defense, at least.
I'm going to take the under on it.
Okay.
Because I'm just getting the feeling, and look, we don't know. We'll talk about it today. We had a little scrimmage action and some sound from practice. Interested to hear Coach Witt talk about the battle for RB1. It's not Wayshawn's job yet entirely, which is good. You always want a couple of backs. I just sense that we're going to have a lot of like 17-13s, 2017 type games.
That brings a joyful tear to Kyle Whittingham's eye when you say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So I'll take the under. I think the defense is going to be stout, and I just continue to be a little bit skeptical about exactly what this offense is going to look like. I'll just go the state motto of Missouri, just the show me state. I don't know enough about these playmakers in this system to be able to say they're going to score 30, 35 points a game. I think we're in for a ball control the line of scrimmage, rushing attack, and dare you to score on us. I think we're going to have a lot of low-scoring wins for Utah football this year.
For context, for anyone who wasn't listening at the beginning of the show, 2016, you would have hit the over on 22.5. This is the defense allowing that many points. 2016, they would have allowed the over. 2017, the same is true. 2018, which, of course, was a runner-up year in the Pac-12 conference, under 19.4. 2019, 15 points a game.
Whew. I'm telling you.
Stingy.
That 2019
That's the
team,
ultimate what-if team.
It is, and always will be, and potentially the most talented team that we've ever had in the state. And that includes all of our D1 schools.
COVID season doesn't count, but 26 points per game. 2021, you gave up 22.6, so just over on the over-under. And then in 2022, conference championship year, just under 21.4 points per game. In 2023, which was not anyone's favorite year, still only gave up 19.3 points a game. In 2024, you were number 2 in the Big 12 conference with 20.7 points per game.
Okay. Yeah, I feel good about taking the under. That's the first line I felt good about so far. The other ones I've been a little bit back and forth. So, yeah, as we all say every year, it's something you never question with Coach Witt and Coach Scally. You just feel like the defense is always going to be locked in, knocking on wood, assuming full health, obviously.
79-46, you got the answer right. It was right behind BYU, regretfully, number 2 because of the refs from the top.
Because of the refs. Got to love it.
Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. Let's do it again tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.